Called me dead weight in front of 37 people. No warning, no meeting invite. Just slid into my weekly ops review like a preppy guillotine in tailored chinos, leaned against the whiteboard I'd been presenting on, and said, loud, bored, and sipping his stupid pistachio smoothie, I don't get why we still have legacy staff. It's like carrying dead weight. No one laughed, no one moved. Just the faint hum of the HVAC and the stench of my dignity catching fire. I was the director of strategic fulfillment. I'd built our supply chain from the ground up, before he was even out of whatever Ivy League frat taught him that smirk. 12 years, 3 crises, and one multi-million-dollar acquisition I personally brokered during COVID while my father died in hospice. Bradley, the future Whitmore, didn't know any of that. Didn't ask, didn't care. He had a jawline sharp enough to slice empathy and a resume ghostwritten by his father's executive assistant. Rumor was his last job lasted 9 months, ending in a mutual decision after someone found his pitch deck had been plagiarized from a YouTube dropshipper. Now he was the CEO's transformation consultant, which was code for our legal department advised against naming him CEO outright. His dad ran the company. I ran the supply chain. Only one of us bled for this place, and he just painted a target on me. I didn't say a word. I closed the PowerPoint, nodded to my team, and walked out before my face betrayed me. In the bathroom, I locked the door, sat on the toilet seat like a war widow in a silk blouse, and stared at the black tile until my breathing slowed. I counted 12 visible cracks in the grout, same as my years here. Funny, I'd seen layoffs, and in the room when we shaved entire departments off the books like fat from a steak. But this was different. This was personal. Calculated. I wasn't just next, I was already gone. He just hadn't filed the paperwork yet. Still, something about how he said it, that tone, itched behind my ears like an echo I couldn't place. Not anger, not authority, something smug, secure. He had a plan. And that terrified me more than any severance clause ever could. And I got back to my desk, there was a post-it on my monitor. Bradley wants to see you at 4 p.m. I texted my husband, looks like it's happening. He texted back, I'll chill the champagne or the shotgun. At 4 o'clock sharp, I walked into the glass conference room. Bradley was already seated. 2 HR reps flanked him like pallbearers. One had that overly polite smile HR people wear when they're about to end your mortgage. Sarah, Bradley said, like we were old high school friends. Let's be honest, you've been an asset, a really solid archive. I looked at the folder on the table. Glossy, too thick for comfort, exit packet, but we're pivoting, leaner, more agile. Think of this as a chance for reinvention. I opened the folder. Severance was shockingly generous. 6 months base pay, bonus included, vesting options untouched. I looked up, squinting. You want me out happy. Quiet. He smirked like a man who thought he'd invented chess. I want you to land on your feet, no bad blood. Bullshit. This wasn't mercy, it was insurance, but I played along. Signed it with a calm hand and a throat full of battery acid. Shook his hand, even smiled, walked out like I was headed to brunch. Then I went home, uncorked a bottle of Shiraz older than his social media presence, and opened the folder I'd kept hidden in my closet for 6 months. Mogsa acquisition, packet confidential. Bradley didn't know the real game had started before he even got his office nameplate. He didn't know I'd been in quiet talks with Mogsa, the supplier our entire freight ecosystem ran on. He didn't know their founder was getting divorced, or that I'd flown to Houston last October in a gray blazer and left with a promise on a napkin and a silent NDA. He didn't know any of that, but he would. Soon. Monday morning came like a quiet detonation. I didn't sleep the night before, too much adrenaline, too much planning. I watched the sun bleed through the blinds while running numbers, margins, projections. The severance Bradley thought would silence me had just become my weapon, like handing your firing squad the gun and realizing you still had the bullets. At 8:04 a.m., I walked into a nondescript office building 2 hours south of the city. No logos, no receptionist, just a keypad door and a flickering fluorescent bulb in the hallway that buzzed like it was in pain. Vince Caldwell, founder of Mogsa, met me in the break room, if you can call a room with a dying Keurig and a lopsided vending machine a break room. It looked like an aging longshoreman in a wrinkled Henley and boots that hadn't seen polish since the Obama era. You sure you want this headache? He asked, sipping burnt coffee from a styrofoam cup. You know, once you buy in, you inherit every demon that's haunted this place since 1997. I smiled. I'm a woman in logistics. I've already danced with the devil. This is just his cousin. He barked a laugh, then tossed me a folder. 51%, all yours, pending wire confirmation. I transferred the funds from 3 accounts, my severance, a quiet liquidation of an old investment I made back when Bitcoin was still something you explained at parties, and the third, a loan from a ghost, my late sister's trust fund, which I swore I'd never touch unless blood was in the water. It was, and it tasted like pistachio smoothie. By 11:45 a.m., I had controlling interest in Mogsa. By 1:30, I was in their system as interim chair. And by 2:10, I was drafting the freight restructuring letter that would land on my old company's desk like a wrecking ball wrapped in velvet. The beauty of it? No legal fireworks, no theatrics. Just a quiet 18% rate increase and a sudden mysterious pause on all preferred scheduling due to volume congestion and strategic realignment. Bradley wouldn't see it coming. He probably didn't even know Mogsa by name. Procurement handled those details, which meant he'd feel the fallout before he ever identified the storm's eye. But something else happened before I could finish savoring the move. At 3:26 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Houston area code. I let it ring, then it buzzed again. This time, a text, "We should talk, your move didn't go unnoticed." I stared at it. Was all it said, not Vince. Not anyone on the Mogsa board, just K. My stomach twisted, because there was only one person in my life who signed off as K, Katrina Whitmore, Bradley's mother, and the CEO's ex-wife. The woman who once whispered to me in a conference lounge after a merger summit, "You know you're smarter than all of them, right? You just hide it too well." I hadn't spoken to her in 6 years. Not since she disappeared after the divorce, after she was quietly bought out of her 12% ownership in the company. The fact that she was reaching out now, that she knew what I'd done, either I'd made a mistake or someone else had been planning a war long before I even picked up my sword. And maybe I'd just stepped into her battlefield. I didn't respond to her text, not yet. Instead, I went for a walk. Not the meditative, clarity-seeking kind. The kind where your body moves but your mind's a furnace. Every step echoing with questions you don't want answers to. Why now? Why her? How did she know? There were only 5 people at Mogsa who knew I was the new majority owner, and none of them had any reason to leak it. I hadn't even signed the public filings yet, which meant either Katrina had someone on the inside or she was the inside. Back in the day, Katrina Whitmore was more feared than her husband and twice as respected. She built the brand, ran marketing like a mob boss in pearls. Employees called her the Velvet Guillotine, because if she wanted you gone, you wouldn't even feel the cut until you saw your email bounce back. Then she vanished. No LinkedIn activity. No PR statements, just a footnote in a quarterly filing and a few whispers about the settlement that bought her silence. Until now, at 5:12 p.m., I cracked. Send a reply me, "What do you want?" The dots appeared. Disappeared, appeared again. Then her message landed like a silk-wrapped dagger. "K, dinner, just you me." And some overdue honesty. "Tomorrow, Bellamy's, 7 sharp, you'll want to hear this." I stared at the screen. Bellamy's wasn't a restaurant, it was the restaurant. The place where power dined with secrets and nobody ever asked for the wine list because the sommelier already knew your tells. She'd booked it on a Tuesday. That wasn't a meeting. That was a move, and I played right into it. At 7:03 the next evening, Katrina was already seated, swirling something red and ruinously expensive in a glass the size of a baptismal font. She looked untouched by time, like she'd made a deal with the devil and then brokered his second divorce. I slid into the booth across from her. She didn't speak. Just slid a small envelope across the table. No words, no preamble. Inside were 3 photos. 1, Bradley shaking hands with Vince Caldwell. 2, a scanned stock transfer agreement dated 2 weeks before my buyout. 3, an email chain between Bradley and someone named Harrison Drake, Moog's CFO, discussing partial acquisition for vertical integration. I felt the blood drain from my arms. "He tried to beat you to it," Katrina said finally, voice like ash over velvet. "But he's too arrogant to check who held the swing shares. That's why your timing mattered. You didn't just buy 51% of Moogsa, you blocked his consolidation plan." I blinked, dry-mouthed. "You wanted to acquire Moogsa for your ex-husband's company?" She nodded. Bradley's little transformation plan, it's not about leanness, it's about leverage. He wanted control of the supply chain so he could gut it, inflate value, and cash out in 2 years with a golden parachute. She paused. "You ruined that." I leaned back. "So what's this, you gloating?" Katrina smiled, not kindly. "This is an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "You keep Moogsa, but I want in. 5%. Silent, you front the moves, I feed you intel. And in 6 months you'll have him dangling by strings he thinks he tied himself." I laughed bitter. "Why would I trust you?" Her eyes hardened. "Because I hate my son more than you do." For a second, the table was a no-man's land between 2 women who'd both bled for the same throne. And then, slowly, I reached for the wine menu. If we were going to burn this dynasty down, we'd need something decent to toast with. The first strike came 3 days later, and it didn't come from Bradley. It came from accounting. An internal audit request hit Moogsa like a sniper round, clean, precise, and right between the eyes. Clarification of vendor ownership relationships, it said. Neutral language, but the subtext was neon. Bradley knew, or at least he suspected. Someone had tipped him off, probably Harrison Drake, his sad excuse for a CFO, who had all the spine of a beige curtain and none of the discretion. I could practically hear the weasel's voice in the boardroom. "There's been a development." That's when the phone calls started. Procurement leads, warehouse managers. Even a junior logistics analyst I trained 3 years ago sent me a panicked DM. "Hey Sarah, is it true you own Moogsa now?" I heard from Devin in ops. He said, "You're pulling freight away from Whitmore Corp. Please tell me you're not going to tank our department." And just like that, I realized the most powerful weapon Bradley had wasn't money or position, it was fear. Fear in the ranks, fear in whispers, fear that if they sided with the wrong legacy, they'd be purged by whichever god came out on top. That night, Katrina called me. "I told you he'd sniff it out," she said, voice flat. "He's not smart, but he's paranoid." and that makes him dangerous. I was pacing my apartment barefoot, wine glass untouched, windows wide open to the storm rolling in. So what's next? He's going to play victim, she said, bored sympathy. Spin the narrative. You're the unstable ex-employee lashing out. He'll call it revenge. Say you're emotionally compromised. I rubbed my temples. That would land if I hadn't just negotiated 3 new bulk routes and cut Mogs's shipping loss by 8%. Katrina's voice dipped to a whisper. Sarah, you need to hit him personally. Professional threats he can navigate, but humiliate him? Undermine him in front of the board? That he can't survive. I didn't respond. But the next morning I made a call to Gerald Finn. Gerald was the owner of FinTech Distribution, one of Whitmore Corp's biggest clients, and more importantly, he hated Bradley. See, 2 years ago, Brad got drunk at a Vegas expo and told Gerald his wife looked like a discount Ivanka. Word traveled. Contracts strained. But Gerald stayed, mostly out of inertia, until now. When I met him for coffee, I didn't pitch anything. I just slid a paper across the table. Mogs's new exclusive distribution rates, 10% lower than anything Whitmore could match, with guaranteed on-time delivery and zero surcharge fluctuations for 18 months. Gerald looked at the paper, then at me. He finally stepped on the wrong throat. I sipped my latte. And I'm offering you the boot to finish the job. He signed that afternoon. By Friday, Whitmore's logistics team was in full panic mode. An email leaked, God bless the interns, with the subject line, Urgent, FinTech on pause. Who approved this? Bradley hadn't shown up to HQ in 2 days. Rumors said he was working remote. Translation, sweating bullets in his overpriced loft and probably blaming everyone but himself. That weekend, I got a courier envelope. No return address. Just my name in capital letters. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. Bradley, shirtless, holding a tumbler of whiskey in one hand, the other arm around someone disturbingly familiar, Harrison Drake. The timestamp read, last Thursday, 3:44 a.m. Scrawled on the back in looping ink, everyone has leverage. You just have to decide where to press. It hit me then. Katrina wasn't just feeding me intel. She was orchestrating a symphony of destruction, and I was just the loudest instrument in her arrangement. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the photo, though the sight of Bradley half-drunk and draped around his own CFO like a frat boy mid-breakdown was grotesquely fascinating, but because of what it meant. The Polaroid wasn't blackmail. It was a message. Katrina was telling me she had surveillance, that she was watching every move, every shadow, every secret, and she had plans. But here's the problem with brilliant conspirators. They forget not everyone likes being a pawn, even if the game favors them. Sunday afternoon, I called her. I want the truth, I said. No greeting. No warm-up. How long have you been planning this? She didn't miss a beat. Since the day Whitmore Sr. called me a brand liability and offered to pay me to disappear. I gripped the phone tighter. You waited 6 years. I waited for the right kind of storm, she said coolly. And then you showed up like lightning in a bottle. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. And what happens after we burn it all down? You just want revenge? Her pause was short but telling. I want my company back, not a name, not on paper, but in truth. And I don't care who has to fall to get it. That was the first time I felt it. Hesitation, because the way she said fall, it wasn't metaphorical. Katrina was playing for keeps, and if I wasn't careful, I'd end up collateral damage wearing a crown I didn't ask for. But I didn't back out, not yet, because just as she'd manipulated me into pushing the first domino, Bradley had started pushing back. Monday morning, I got the ping. New email in your inbox, subject urgent, Mogsa vendor suspension. I opened it. Bradley had frozen all Mogsa POs, claimed discrepancies in quality assurance, and cited a non-existent audit report. Effective immediately, Mogsa was under performance review. Orders halted, payments paused, communication to be rerouted through legal. It was a corporate siege. I grinned, because what Bradley didn't know was that I'd already rerouted half those deliveries through shell vendors I owned via a holding company. Same shipments, different labels. His suspension meant nothing to the trucks already unloading behind his warehouses. But optics were everything. I needed to respond, so I did publicly. I drafted an open letter. Simple, elegant, lethal. At Mogsa, we stand by our standards and our service. Any delay in delivery caused by internal policy shifts within client organizations does not reflect our logistics performance but their internal disarray. We remain ready and capable to serve all contracts currently under agreement. We will not, however, compromise on integrity or transparency. I hit send at 2:13 p.m. By 2:26, #Whitmore Meltdown was trending on Twitter. By 3 o'clock, 2 other major clients reached out to Mogsa directly, asking if they could bypass Whitmore Corp and source directly. At 4:07 p.m., Katrina texted, "Well played, Queen." He's pacing in his father's office, calling it sabotage. Guess what? Daddy's siding with the board. Then a second message followed. Also, he just had a visitor. Attached was a grainy still from a security cam. Bradley, in his office, standing across from a lawyer in a slate gray suit, the kind of suit that comes with partners and exit clauses. I stared at it, the way one stares at an oncoming train, too fascinated to move. He was lawyering up. The idiot thought he could sue me, and I was going to let him try. The lawsuit hit my inbox at 8:01 a.m. sharp like it had been scheduled by a vengeance-obsessed intern. Subject, Whitmore Corp. v. Sarah Tran preliminary injunction notice it read like a soap opera written by an angry trust fund. Malicious interference, corporate espionage, conflicts of interest, my favorite, emotional instability resulting in retaliatory acquisition. I half expected it to accuse me of casting spells and boiling rabbits. I read it 3 times, slower with each pass. He wasn't trying to win, he was trying to stall. If the court granted even a temporary injunction, could freeze Mogs's ability to sign new contracts for weeks. And Bradley knew exactly which partnerships I was finalizing. He wanted to jam the gears long enough to flood the board with chaos, until Daddy swooped in, declared him the wounded hero, and slapped my name across a press release like a cautionary tale. But here's what he didn't know. I wasn't just the defendant, I had receipts. At noon, my attorney, a woman named Eliza Hart, whose entire career could be summarized by unflinching, unbothered, undefeated, and I walked into the Whitmore Tower like we were hunting vampires. The board had been summoned. Emergency session. Bradley thought he was going to ambush me in front of them. Instead, Eliza handed out slim black folders like party favors. Inside each, a timeline, detailed, dated, sourced. Exhibits of Bradley's unauthorized communication with Mogs's CFO. His backdoor attempts to inflate shipping costs and reroute inventory through a company he was quietly trying to acquire with offshore proxies. We traced the ownership chain. 2 layers deep, then deeper. At the bottom, a holding company. And at the bottom of that, Bradley's name, misspelled, but notarized. He didn't just plan to acquire Mogsa. He tried to buy it out from under his own father. When the documents hit the table, the room turned to stone. You could hear a hairpin debate its life choices. Bradley stammered. This is taken out of context. You were defrauding your own company, Eliza said, voice clean as a guillotine. And the woman you tried to bury beat you to the grave and started renting out the dirt. He turned red, full tomato, throat bobbing like a hooked fish. But she orchestrated this. She bought out Mogsa to sabotage us. I stepped forward. Correction. I bought Mogsa to survive. You made it sabotage when you tried to gut my career and carve it up for parts. You started this war thinking I'd die quietly, and now here we are. The board said nothing, but their eyes said everything. And then came the moment that told me I'd won the room. His father, Robert Whitmore, finally leaned forward, removed his glasses, and said, Bradley, son, step outside. Now. But now. Bradley shot daggers at me as he left, but his face had already cracked. Spoiled child behind the title had surfaced. Then Robert turned to me. You planned this. No, I said calmly. He did, I just had better aim, a long silence. Then he asked, what would it take to make this go away? That's when I saw it, not regret, not shock, fear. He knew this wasn't just a PR disaster. This was criminal, shareholder lawsuits, regulatory inquiries, SEC scrutiny. And if I wanted to, I could burn them to ash. I leaned in. I don't want money. I don't want hush deals. I want clean separation. Full dissolution of Whitmore's ties to Mogsa. Publicly stated. And Bradley? I want his resignation on paper. His jaw clenched. You're not leaving me much room. No, I said, but I am leaving you a company. He nodded once, then handed me a pen. The statement hit the wires 36 hours later. Effective immediately. Bradley Whitmore has stepped down from his role at Whitmore Corporation to pursue new opportunities. The board thanks him for his contributions during a time of transition. Classic corporate obit language. No mention of lawsuits. No mention of Mogsa. And definitely no mention of the fact that Bradley left the building escorted by security, screaming into a Bluetooth earpiece like a reality TV contestant on the brink of a breakdown. The board had done their part. It swallowed the medicine. In exchange, I signed the release that killed the lawsuit, sealed, mutual, sterilized. But something didn't sit right. It should have felt like victory. I should have been popping champagne with Katrina and watching the LinkedIn think pieces roll in. Female exec dismantles nepotism one freight contract at a time. Instead, I sat in my car outside the courthouse, staring at the dashboard like it owed me answers. Because something still didn't track. Bradley was a spoiled narcissist, yes. A clown in loafers, absolutely, but not this sloppy. Not the kind of man who leaves notarized trails and tangled proxies unless someone wanted him to. Unless someone sharpened the blade for him. My phone buzzed, unknown number again. This time a voicemail, Katrina's voice, but low, almost confessional. If you're hearing this, it means I'm probably out of pocket. I did what I had to do, Sarah. That company was mine before Robert married it away. I needed a fall guy and Brad was born to play the role. But don't look so shocked. You got what you wanted. Now take it and walk away. I froze. The temperature in the car dropped 10 degrees. She used me. Every move, every leak, every whisper in the boardroom. Katrina didn't just want revenge, she wanted resurrection. And she built it on a pyre made of her own son. And I was the match. I drove to Bellamy's, our old meeting ground. It was closed, too early for dinner service. But taped to the door was a plain envelope. Inside, a single page, signed and notarized. Transfer of ownership, 12% of Mogsa Holdings to me from Katrina. I stared at the paper, heartbeat like a war drum. I now own 63% of Mogsa. Alone, no partners, no backers, she had vanished, off the grid. No social media, no burner line. I even checked the shell trust she'd used to invest, emptied, dissolved, gone. Katrina Whitmore had burned every trace of herself from the ledger, but she left me with the empire, and the silence was deafening. 3 weeks passed, no calls, no sightings, no goddamn trace of Katrina Whitmore. Mogs surged. Clients who once ignored my emails were now begging for contracts. I renegotiated shipping corridors, automated half the routing system, and poached Whitmore Corp's former logistics director. He quit with a smile and brought his whole team with him. The empire was thriving, but every win tasted like ash. Because every time I walked into the office, I didn't feel like a queen. I felt like a caretaker of a throne built on blood. Her blood, his, mine, none of us clean. Then late one Friday night, just as I was shutting down for the weekend, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name. Written in blue ink I recognized instantly. Inside were two things: a photo, old, faded, of Katrina in a hospital bed, smiling weakly with a newborn swaddled in her arms. The name tag on the baby read, Bradley Whitmore, 1993, and a letter. Sarah, you were always meant to run it. I just couldn't get there without breaking a few bones, mine included. Bradley wasn't always a monster, but power doesn't forgive softness. I did what I had to do. You did what you had to do. We both carry ghosts now. Here's my final gift: no more strings, no more shadows. You lead now, don't become me. Okay, I sat in my office chair until the sun came up, that photo clutched in my hand like it had a heartbeat. I could sell, I could scale, I could disappear, but I didn't. Monday morning, I walked into the boardroom. Alone, no lawyers, no allies, just me and the silence Katrina left behind. I pulled up the quarterly report, looked every exec in the eye, and I spoke the only words that mattered. I'm not here to play queen. I'm here to build something that no man, no sun, no ghost can burn again. They nodded, slowly, and just like that, the room belonged to me, not inherited, earned. And somewhere in some forgotten corner of the world, I hope Katrina smiled, because the woman she used, she's gone. What's left is the architect, and she's just getting started. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.